California's ultimate ghost town. Once a thriving mining community, this state park and National Historic Landmark is now home to 23 summer and 7 winter residents, plus a handful of ghosts and a strange and possibly deadly curse. Set at the end of an unpaved road about 75 miles outside of Lake Tahoe, Bodie owes its existence and possibly its curse to a gold prospector named W.S. Bodie from Poughkeepsie, New York, who discovered gold in the hills above the present-day town in 1859. Along with his partner, E.S. Taylor, Bodie staked a claim to the area, but he didn't live long enough to profit from his find. During the fall of that same year, Bodie and Taylor were on their way back from the nearby mining camp of Monteville with supplies when they were caught in a snowstorm. Bodie became too weak to continue, so Taylor pressed on alone. He later reported that he dropped the supplies at their cabin and returned immediately to search for his friend. But it was too late. Bodie was lost beneath the mounting snow. Taylor returned in the spring and apparently buried Bodie where he died. There was no death certificate and no headstone. Gold mining was a dangerous proposition, and deaths were far from uncommon. But consider this. Ever since Bodie was opened to the public as a historic park in 1962, visitors have reported falling victim to a run of bad luck in the days and months that follow their time in the town. Everything from financial calamities to physical injuries. Every year, park rangers receive a variety of packages in the mail, each containing a memento pilfered from the park, most accompanied by abject apologies begging to be released from the curse now that the item has been returned. Given these stories, we have to at least consider the possibility that maybe Bodie felt that his friend Taylor didn't try quite hard enough to save him, perhaps in order to avoid sharing in the profits of their claim. If that's true, then the curse may be Bodie's spirit reaching from beyond the grave to punish those who take what does not rightfully belong to them. And just maybe, Taylor was the curse's very first victim. He was murdered in Nevada just 2 years later while visiting another of his claims. According to some stories, his killers passed his skull around for years as a memento of the event. The true value of Bodie's claim wasn't revealed until 1897. At that time, the Bodie Consolidated Mining Company was on the verge of abandoning the area when a mine collapse exposed rich veins of gold and silver. By 1879, Bodie's population had grown to approximately 10,000 people, and the town had such a reputation for lawlessness that one little girl, according to legend, on learning that she'd be moving to the town with her family, wrote in her diary, "Goodbye, God, I'm going to Bodie." If true, she had plenty of reasons for being nervous. Though the town did accommodate 2 churches, it also held 65 saloons and a thriving red light district, including brothels, gambling rooms, and a pair of opium dens. Bodie's most famous soiled dove, as prostitutes were sometimes called, was a woman named Lottie Joel. Lottie was quite famous in her chosen career when she arrived in Bodie, although there's some dispute over whether she ever plied her trade in town. What is known is that she quickly met and married the Bodie town butcher Eli Joel and retired. Lottie Joel was never accepted in Bodie, though, and there are stories of neighbors' cruelty to her, including one in which she won a contest at a masked ball, only to be deprived of her prize when her identity was discovered. The Joels were apparently socially isolated, and Lottie coped with the solitude by becoming an amateur painter. It's possible, though, that one Bodie resident wasn't content to have a once-famous prostitute, however retired, living among them. Lottie was poisoned by a prescription medication error that ultimately killed her. While her death was ruled accidental, rumors persisted that it was really either a suicide or something else. Whatever the case, Eli Joel successfully fought his neighbors to have Lottie buried in the Miners' Union Cemetery, rather than outside the gates on the town's Boot Hill, the usual fate for prostitutes. Her tombstone and the Joel house stand to this day. Although one of the most common forms of death in Bodie apparently came from drunken miners falling down open shafts, the town did have its share of violence. Not far from Lottie Joel's grave is that of Alexander Nixon, first president of the Bodie Miners Union. Nixon died in a shootout with his own best friend, Tom MacDonald, apparently over some vague argument over who was the better man. I'll leave you to decide who won that dispute. 1881 brought a violent murder to Bodie and the only documented lynching in the town's history. A French-Canadian carpenter named Joseph Desroches shot an English miner, Thomas Treloar, in the back of the head. Desroches had danced with Treloar's wife, Johanna, at a ball that night, angering Treloar. Later, Desroches followed Treloar outside sometime after 1 a.m., and thinking they were alone, shot him in the back of the head. Unfortunately for Desroches, 2 locals happened to be having a quiet conversation nearby, and they witnessed the murder. Treloar was apparently well liked in Bodie, and considered to be the weaker of the 2 men, apparently after a mining accident caused brain injury. The constable who arrested Desroches, Farnsworth, was apparently drunk at the time, and made the misguided decision to place Desroches in Farnsworth's own room at the boarding house, rather than the local jail. Desroches attempted to bribe his way to freedom. When that didn't work, he simply waited for Farnsworth to fall asleep, located the keys to his shackles, and released himself. Farnsworth was relieved of his duties and advised to leave town. Then a posse formed to recapture Desroches. He was located at his brother's ranch outside of town and taken back to jail, where he insisted that the shooting was an accident prompted by Desroches grabbing Treloar's arm when the dead man attempted to shoot him. Desroches' murder trial began the following Monday, but it didn't move swiftly enough for the outraged Bodie citizens. A vigilante group, supposedly composed of 601 Bodie residents, who were now convinced that Desroches had conspired with Johanna to kill Treloar for insurance money, ran Johanna out of town before hanging Desroches on the spot where he'd shot Treloar. In the aftermath, it was revealed that the affair between Desroches and Johanna had in fact been a long-standing one. Some even claim that they had heard Johanna admit that she married Treloar in the hopes of one day gaining insurance from his death. But with Desroches dead and Johanna gone, it was impossible to ever know for certain what really happened that night after the end of the ball. Still, things weren't always dark in Bodie. In 1892, pressed by the high cost of wood for the mine's steam generators, the Standard Mining Company constructed a hydroelectric plant on nearby Green Creek and connected it via telephone lines to a substation in Bodie and then on to the Standard Mills stamp mill. The wires were all laid out in a straight line because it was believed at the time that electricity couldn't travel around corners. Despite this misconception, the newly electric stamp mill marked one of the nation's first successful uses of electricity transported over long distances. Even with the arrival of electricity, though, Bodie's days were numbered. In 1878, a fire originating in a defective stovepipe above a Chinese restaurant and laundry devastated one entire end of town. In the early 1900s, miners began leaving Bodie for more profitable strikes, dropping the town's population drastically and causing the mining companies to consolidate. Local entrepreneur James Kane bought many properties and claims as the town shrank, and by the 1930s, Bodie's population was down to just a few hundred. Then tragedy struck again, this time at the hands of a child. In 1932, a 4-year-old boy named Billy attended a birthday party of a friend. He grew upset when he learned that owing to the Great Depression, Jell-O was being served in lieu of cake and ice cream. Billy was either sent home or ran off on his own, and somehow he acquired a book of matches, which he used to set fire to an abandoned building. But Billy could share the blame with someone else that day. A local man responsible for keeping the town's fire suppression system grates clean had neglected his duties. When firefighters attached their hoses to the town hydrants, they got only mud and rocks for their efforts. A bucket brigade was quickly organized, but there were too few residents left to put up much resistance. The fire destroyed roughly 90% of the town. When the smoke cleared, the man who had neglected the grates was forced to flee, while Billy's family was given 24 hours to pack up and move. Bodie's fate was finally sealed in 1942, when the War Production Board shut down all gold mines, deeming them unnecessary to the war effort. However, the town was never truly abandoned, since the Kane family hired caretakers to watch over the mines. In 1958, Kane's heirs sold most of the town to the state of California, and the few remaining landowners eventually followed suit. One longtime Bodie resident, Bob Bell, became one of Bodie Historic State Park's first employees. When he died in 2003, Bell became the last person to be buried in the town's cemetery, although there are still a handful of former Bodie residents who may choose to eventually be interred here. Given its rich and colorful history, it's not surprising that Bodie has its share of ghosts. One story told is that of a miner and his white mule who died in one of the town mines. It is said that anyone approaching that mine is met by the spirit of the white mule warning them to stay away. Closer to the center of town, people have reported hearing the sounds of a lively party emanating from the Mendocini house, including music and the sounds of children's laughter. Perhaps the most disturbing story, though, concerns the Kane house, which still stands at the corner of Green and Prospect Street. Now serving as a park ranger's residence, the house is said to be the home of the ghost of a maid who was seduced by James Kane and then fired by his wife. Unemployed and in despair, the maid killed herself. Her ghost has been seen in the upstairs windows by visitors to the park, sometimes accompanied by the sounds of music. Residents of the Rangers' quarters have reported phenomena in one of the upstairs bedrooms, including lights turning off and on by themselves, doors opening, and even a sense of being suffocated in bed. However, the most enduring legend is that of the Bodie curse, perhaps born out of the frustration of W.S. Bodie, who died alone, cut off forever from the profits of his gold. If you have a chance to visit Bodie, be sure to stop by the Museum and Visitor Center, housed in the old Miners' Union Hall, where you can read some of the letters received by park rangers over the years in response to the curse, each accompanied by a returned item, sometimes as insignificant as a nail or a rusted can. Take pictures, take memories. Buy a book, a souvenir coin, or even a t-shirt and take it away with you. But if you see something appealing on the grounds or in one of the buildings as you walk about the park, leave it where it lies, or the curse of W.S. Bodie just might follow you home.